When we think of some of our favorite films, chances are very high they were produced by the six majors. What are the six majors? They are the most powerful studios in Hollywood, and each of them proved to be unique in the films they produce and distribute, and all with the intent of entertaining and enthralling us in some way. Each of them strive to make worthy pictures, and each have something special in the way they run things. And to thank them, I want to pay tribute to the six major Hollywood studios and explain what makes them stand out. The oldest major Hollywood studio is Universal Pictures, which a lot of us view as the land of summer blockbusters, thanks to its continuing association with Steven Spielberg. Spielberg, his production company Amblin, and Universal collaborated to bring to the screen such renowned works as Jaws, Back to the Future, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, and An American Tail. They've also had a long-lasting relationship with Ron Howard and Brian Grazer's Imagine Entertainment, the British company Working Title, responsible for some of the best romantic comedies of the last 20 years, and Judd Apatow's productions. Nowadays, Universal continues its blockbuster legacy with a solid mix of big-budget and mid-budget productions. One of my favorite qualities Universal has is having faith in projects that other distributors might not want to take on. Films like Steve Jobs, Ted, and Straight Outta Compton were produced by Universal after other studios turned them down, and they even put their support behind Pacific Rim 2 and Serenity due to the fan adoration those properties hold. Universal also continues to invest heavily in musicals, and through their indie label Focus Features, has financed all of the Leica films with no intention of stopping. Over at Paramount Pictures, they've done a solid job of supporting both massive franchises and films aimed at an adult audience seeking more dramatic fare. One of the most important contributions to their legacy is the Star Trek series, which continues to gain new fans. However you feel about the current reboots, they've done a splendid job of giving new life to the series and gaining new admirers. Their commitment to directors like J.J. Abrams and Martin Scorsese is also something to be admired. We also have the studio to thank for jump-starting the Marvel Cinematic Universe, even if they're no longer involved. Paramount is a studio open to films that might be considered otherwise risky, like their releases last year of Anomalisa and The Big Short. And they're capping off this year with such promising fare as Arrival, Allied, and Fences, all serious, director-driven passion projects. Paramount is currently going through a restructuring, so it'll be interesting where they'll go in the future with both their many proven franchise properties and their original productions. Warner Brothers might have the most storied legacy of the current majors. From the groundbreaking talkie The Jazz Singer to the many gangster pictures, they have a lot to live up to, and I think they've done a commendable job of doing that. Certainly their biggest success story in the current millennium has been the Harry Potter series. This was a series in which they fully trusted producer David Heyman, author J.K. Rowling, and the directors create a franchise that properly adapted the books loved by so many. That the films lasted with a lot of the same personnel speaks to Warner Brothers being able to handle a long-running series. They've also been noted for their loyalty to directors. There's a reason filmmakers like Christopher Nolan, Clint Eastwood, Stanley Kubrick, the Wachowskis, George Miller, Zack Snyder, Guy Ritchie, and Ben Affleck have and will continue to collaborate with Warner's. Warner Brothers releases the most number of films per year, but there's a clear mandate they want to set by not only making big blockbusters like the Batman franchise, but also smaller and more personal works like Spike Jonze's Her and Jeff Nichols' Midnight Special. Disney is actually a fairly recent addition to the Hollywood majors. It was always a presence, and the studio started distributing its own films in the early 1950s, but it was not until the 80s they were accepted as part of the group. And now they are a powerhouse that's almost the envy of the other Hollywood studios. Part of it is their impressive ability of grabbing a hold of certain properties. We've seen what they've done with the Marvel characters and their ever-growing cinematic universe. They've also done a fantastic job so far of taking care of Star Wars, and I fully expect the rest of the franchise to keep the high quality of The Force Awakens intact. They're also in possession of two of the finest animation studios in the world, one that has grown a lot since its day making Mickey Mouse cartoons and developed a catalog of classic titles cherished the world over, and the other a computer animation upstart that certainly affected the animation industry in many ways. A lot of Disney's current structure and production pipeline is based around tentpoles, and they've done extremely well in how each brand and blockbuster has been cultivated and cared for. However, sometimes we get something original and exciting that doesn't fit into the expected boxes, whether it be Brad Bird's inspiring Tomorrowland, Steven Spielberg's magical The BFG, and I'm certainly looking forward to Ava DuVernay taking on A Wrinkle in Time in the near future. However, it's important to remember it all started with a mouse. If there is an underdog within the current majors, it's probably Columbia Pictures. However, I think they've done well in growing since the days when Frank Capra helped turn them into a blockbuster studio, and like Disney, they've done a bang-up job of utilizing their multiple divisions under the Sony Pictures Entertainment name. Columbia Pictures is the home of their most high-profile tentpole projects. Working alongside MGM and Eon Productions, they've been a fitting home for the James Bond franchise for the past 10 years. They've also showed good taste in putting their support behind such prestige projects like Captain Phillips, American Hustle, Zero Dark 30, and The Social Network. If there was proof their studio willing to take risks, let us never forget Columbia had the balls to greenlight Sausage Party. Speaking of which, their Sony Pictures animation unit is one that has made a name for itself, pushing what computer animation can do and having fun with simple concepts like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and Hotel Transylvania. TriStar Pictures has recently become revitalized as a home where directors can come in and do personal projects at mid-budgets, including the likes of Jonathan Demme, Jodie Foster, Robert Zemeckis, Rian Johnson, and their next release is a film by Ang Lee, which was shot in 120 frames per second. Meanwhile, Screen Gems has also grown to be a great unit for horror films and movies targeted at an African-American audience. And Sony Pictures Classics has managed to highlight some worthy independent films, and through it, Sony is the only major studio that makes an effort to bring foreign language films to English-speaking markets. Like Paramount, Sony Pictures is also going through a transitional period, as Amy Pascal's impressive legacy ends, and we see how Tom Rothman's slate does. He's certainly greenlit some promising titles for the future. And finally, I'll conclude with 20th Century Fox. From its leadership under Darryl Zanuck, producing some of the most provocative films of the 1940s, to launching the Planet of the Apes and Star Wars franchises, Fox has more than earned its place as a studio known for inspiring and exciting film events. Their blockbusters are of course a big deal. Planet of the Apes has taken on new life lately, the X-Men series continues to be strong, including the wonderfully subversive Deadpool, and their current relationship with Ridley Scott and Matthew Vaughn has produced many a great film. Blue Sky Studios has grown as a major producer of wonderful animated features as part of the Fox family, and their Fox Searchlight division has made a real effort out of finding some of the year's best films and trying to bring smaller films to a wider audience. The main Fox unit has done their part too in bringing the unique visions of the likes of David O. Russell, Ang Lee, Alejandro González Iñárritu, and of course James Cameron to the screen. Whenever those famous searchlights appear on screen, it's difficult for me not to get excited for what will follow. And that's how I feel about all the major Hollywood studios. Do they have their occasional flaws? Certainly, but I think it's more important to celebrate their triumphs. Thank you, the 6 of you, for the many great films you've released, and here's to many more in the future. See you next time.